Okay, thank you for your patience. We thought maybe waiting a little bit would bring some more people in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce the people that are on the stage here today. To my right and your left, we have Beth Varney, the Budget Committee Vice Chair, Greg Fuller, Budget Committee Member, and Priscilla Terry, Budget Committee Member. To my left and your right, we have Linda Roy, the School Clerk, Ann Pierce, the Chair of the ACS Board, Lauren Ferruccio, Vice Chair of the ACS Board, Carol Locke, ACS Board Member, and Christy Wood, ACS Board Member. At the table behind, we have Matt Jazokis, the Assistant Superintendent, Janice Christian, ACS Principal, David Latcha, the Prospect Mountain Principal, and at the table behind those folks, we have Tim Broderick, the Superintendent, and Heidi Duford, the Business Administrator. There is a copy of the moderator's rules in the handout directly behind the cover page, and unless there is an objection from the audience, I will not read those rules today. Okay. So I welcome you to the first session of the annual meeting, the Deliberative. You are hereby notified to meet at Prospect Mountain High School at 242 Suncook Valley Road in said district on Saturday, February 1st, 2025 at 1 p.m. This session shall consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles numbers 1 through 5. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended, and warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended. This session also will be here the state of the school, reports of agents, auditors, committees, or officers, and to pass any vote relating thereto. As a reminder, this is normally discussed during the moderator's rules, but any amendments made to an article must be made in writing. The second session of the annual meeting, voting by official ballot. Voting on warrant articles shall be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with town meeting voting on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at Prospect Mountain High School Gymnasium at 242 Suncook Valley Road in Alton. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. and shall remain open until 7 p.m. At this time, I would like to introduce Ann Pierce, the Chair of the Alton Central School Board, to say a few words.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to take a moment to recognize Carol Locke. Carol has served on the board since November of 2020, and she has served on multiple committees, including Budget Committee, and currently on our Literacy Committee as well. And she will be continuing her hard work there, but she is officially going into retirement again. So thank you, Carol, for all your hard work.
Thank you, Danielle, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Carol. Next, I'd like to welcome our new principals, starting with David Latcha at Prospect Mountain High School. David's been doing a great job with his new staff. Discipline has been a big issue in schools since the pandemic, and under Mr. Latcha's leadership, disciplinary referrals and suspensions are down dramatically. Administration has been focusing on supporting teachers in the classroom to handle student behavior at the lowest possible level of intervention. We're seeing a lot of positive results, and I'm hearing a lot of positive things. At Alton Central School, the board has been thrilled with the performance of Janice Christian. In fact, the board recently voted to forego a principal search this year, remove the interim tag from Ms. Christian's title, and offer her a contract to remain at ACS for the next 2 years. At Alton, I'd like to thank our business administrator, time and time again, but I'd like to thank our business administrator, Heidi Duford, for helping our staff develop these budgets and for helping the board navigate the difficult landscape of state funding, especially the reductions we are seeing in special education reimbursement. She keeps us solvent and keeps us informed, so there are no unpleasant surprises. Our assistant superintendent, Matt Chizokos, has been leading curriculum initiatives to align our elementary and middle school programs so students are better prepared when they arrive at Prospect Mountain High School. We are in our second full year of using STAR testing to benchmark student achievement, and we just recently saw the biggest gains in student growth since we started the initiative. Athletic programs and the arts are important to our community. We're pleased with the new developments this year in both areas. This fall, we had the high school's second homecoming under the lights with huge attendance and student support. The music department's fall holiday concerts for both schools were a tremendous success. We continue to enjoy a strong partnership with the Alton Dance Academy and are happy to see students learning outside the classroom with them and performing here on our stage. Finally, special thank you to all of our teachers and all of the other staff at all of our schools. They are the frontline people who make education happen. They are the heart and soul of learning in Alton, and I speak for the whole board when I say thank you to all of our staff.
Thank you, Anne. Next, I'd like to invite Tim Broderick to give a presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. Here we are. So this is my annual overview of primarily what's on your warrants and why, with a little bit of discussion of what we've been trying to do under the Alton Board and Joint Board's directions when developing our recommendations, our administrative and SAU recommendations around the budget and warrant articles. I think if you've attended many or any of these meetings in recent years, you are aware of the overall enrollment decline in our schools. Here is about a 10-year history of enrollment at Prospect Mountain and at Alton Central School. You see declines in both. Prospect Mountain High School's enrollment has declined about 23% in the last 10 years, but more if you go back farther. Alton Central School has not seen as much of a decline in the last few years. Since the pandemic, we've been relatively flat, down about 4%. But if you go back farther, there's about a 14% decline over the last decade in our K through 8 enrollment in Alton. These goals are very similar, consistent with what we're doing last year, and the same things that I reported on, and the boards have been very consistent with what they want us to try to do here in Alton. Enrollment trends continue to be the #1 issue in our school system. Our ability to offer quality programs and the most diverse set of opportunities for students we possibly can is dependent on funding, and our ability to fund is directly tied to enrollment, and it is not unusual to see schools, as they get smaller and smaller, begin to decline in a variety of ways, and that's what we've been working very hard. Again, the board has been asking for this since 2019, and we're working very hard to try to find solutions to these problems. In Alton, we've been focused on per pupil cost the last few years. Our administration, myself, Heidi, and the folks who work with us, I think this is year 3 or year 4 with Alton, and in that time, we've been trying to work with the town budget committee and with other constituents to keep an eye on the amount above state average that Alton has been spending on a per pupil basis. Capital planning's been very important to us the last few years, And then this year, we've really been trying to work on communication and engagement with the community. So on each of these topics, I've got a little bit more here. This is printed and available on the back table, so I don't have to read these slides. If there are questions about open enrollment, I wouldn't be shocked and can certainly answer them on behalf of the board unless they want to do so themselves. This is our second year with students who do not reside in Alton or Barnstead attending Prospect Mountain High School. There are 19 of them here. We billed a little over $165,000 last year to other districts. We have collected just over $66,000 of that money. We continue to send reminders, but what's really happening is we are waiting for the legislature and Supreme Court to take action that could provide clarity for other districts about what their obligations are. That's the bottom line, is that there are differing opinions around the state of how this law works. This is something that if you go back to 2022-23, when we were first talking about adopting the provisions of RSA 194D, I talked about that it would be the beginning of a process and that the state would have to figure out how to administer these programs under this law, because even though RSA 194D was passed about 15 years ago, nobody's ever tried to create and run an open enrollment program under this law in the state. So this is where we are. There is a suit before the state Supreme Court. It is a school district versus the State Board of Education. We are not a party to it. We are not incurring any legal fees, but it is to provide clarity for that other school district about whether or not they have to pay tuition for open enrollment students. The State Board of Education ruled that they must last May, but that school district is now appealing that State Board of Education ruling to the Supreme Court. I mentioned per pupil cost and the state average. In the last few years, we've focused on trying to narrow the gap without rash action, again, working closely with the Alton School Board. And if you want to do the math here, you can see that that amount that we are above the state average is shrinking, but if you look at it on a percentage basis, I've done that for you. Whereas in 2020-21, Alton was spending a little over 40% more than the state average per pupil. Last year, we spent about 17% more than the state average per pupil. I predict this will continue to get closer and closer, not because we think the state average is the right amount to spend, but because we can size our offerings to the number of students in the school. If you go back a couple of slides in your handout and look at enrollment at Alton Central School, there hadn't been any change in staffing commensurate with the reduction in enrollment over the last decade. So what we've been doing, again, working closely with the board, is they haven't directed us to have layoffs or anything like that, but as people leave or retire, we are looking at whether or not it makes sense to reassign, move people around, things like that. So I would predict, without being sure at this point, because we develop these budgets, especially in Alton, we start developing Alton's budget in September every year for next year. So we have no idea who plans to retire or anything like that at the time we're budgeting. And I would predict that there might be a position or two that we end up not having to fill, but until we really have more information this spring, we don't know that. This is why one of the things I've said in the past, and people have sort of given me a hard time about this, is that there's a difference between developing a budget and implementing the budget. Budget development is based on what we think we know or what we have to be prepared for, but implementing the budget is based on what we actually know when we get to the time to start spending next year's money. We don't want to reduce class sizes or services. I'm sorry, we don't want to increase class sizes or reduce services in our schools, and particularly at Alton Central School. The board has policy and guidance for us on what maximum class sizes should look like at different grade levels. We have not had to change those. We don't want to change those, but that's part of this conversation when we talk about staffing levels. And then finally, in our budget development, we've got ever-increasing healthcare costs, health premiums across Prospect Mountain High School and Alton Central School, depending on the plan, for next year, are increasing between 10 and 12%, and that's pretty normal these days. And then, as the chair mentioned, and many of you probably already know, we're seeing significant changes in the state's preparedness to provide special education aid for our out-of-district costs. We have a warrant article related to that I'll talk about briefly as well. Last year on the warrants, the joint board, the Prospect Mountain High School Board, created with voter approval a capital improvement fund. This year, we are spending or have spent about $125,000 on capital improvements here at the high school. Next year, we plan to do less, partially because we are waiting for clarity around that open enrollment tuition, which we view as a revenue source potentially to fund a capital plan. And then there's a planned investment at Alton Central School that we've been working on to replace one of the 5 boiler rooms in the school. So last year, I think, was the first of 5 planned appropriations for that, and this year will be the second, and that's one of the articles on your warrant. Another goal this year has been to expand our community engagement. That starts first with our websites, mobile apps, and providing information on social media, which I think our principals have been doing a good job with. We have electronic signs in front of the schools to help share information in a timely manner. The athletic programs, even though Ann already mentioned this, I just want to give a nod to everybody involved, all of our coaches, our other staff, our new athletic director, and a shout out to Bubba Noyes, the first inductee into our new Athletic Hall of Fame, a well-deserved honor. We're also looking for ways to bring the community into our buildings more, so we're seeing a little bit more use of the auditorium and the theater here, more use of the gym. I think if you go down there today, you're going to see kids from all over the Lakes region playing basketball against each other. That's something that we chose, that we encouraged and want to have happening. This is a public building that should be used by the public as much as possible. Alton School operating budget is up 1.86% from the current year, fiscal 25, to the proposed budget for fiscal 26 next year. The previous 3 years' increases were all a little bit more, but we've seen inflationary pressure during those 3 years that was much greater even than our increases. And this, if you think back about what I just talked about, fewer students, trying to find efficiencies without taking draconian actions, it makes sense, right? We are faced with some increases. We have some special education increases inevitably. We have healthcare increases inevitably. We have some other contractual obligations in pay and benefits, but we're sort of able to balance more or less to moderate these increases. And I think we should be in this position for another couple of years. So the operating budget includes all of our current staff positions at both the high school and at Alton Central School. We do have some additional out-of-district costs we had to budget for next year. One of the biggest things that's happening is this, in Alton at least. There's a shift in enrollment between Alton and Barnstead students attending Prospect Mountain High School. And this is how you share the operating budget or the operating assessment for Prospect Mountain High School. It is divided by a percentage, multiplied really, by the percentage of students from each town attending the school. So in the current year, 51.64% of Prospect Mountain's Alton and Barnstead students are from Alton. For next year, it'll be 47.77%. That swing, that 4 to 5% swing, moves a lot of assessment money from Alton to Barnstead. So there is actually a small reduction in the Alton school budget in assessment to be paid to this high school. And that's also one of the big factors, probably the biggest single factor, that has resulted in a relatively moderate increase in the operating budget overall. I do expect this to continue, by the way, as we look at population in the future. Historically, Alton has had 50% or more of Prospect Mountain students. I predict that for the next 10 years, that will not be the case, that Barnstead will have 50% or more of the students enrolled at this high school. I already mentioned, and you can see on your warrant, the article to feed the Buildings and Grounds Fund for boiler replacement at Alton Central School. There is an article to add some money to the Special Education Trust Fund. Ann and I have both referred to declining support, financial support from the state. 4 years ago, 100% of eligible claims were paid out of the state budget. 3 years ago, it dropped to 98%. Last year, 87, and for this current year, we brought in 67% of last year's eligible claims. And that's because for the last 2 years, the amount of money budgeted in the state budget has been the same, but districts' qualifying requests for reimbursement have increased. As a result, everybody's claims get prorated by the amount of money available. This is also likely to continue, which means we continue to absorb more of these costs as part of our local property tax assessment. And that's it. How's that? Is that okay? Good. You just do whatever you want. Just don't
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, Tim. Next, we'll move to the articles, starting with Article 1, the election warrant. This is for the openings this year for the school board, the district moderator, district clerk, and the district treasurer. We have a school board member, 2 for 3 years, school district moderator, 1 for 1 year, school district clerk, 1 for 1 year, and school district treasurer, 1 for 1 year. Moving to Article 2, the operating budget. Shall the Alton School District raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein totaling $18,096,405. Fiscal note, the amount of $4,934,204 is the net appropriation for the Prospect Mountain High School operating budget, which is included in the gross budget amount listed above and recommended by the Joint Maintenance Agreement JMA Budget Committee. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $18,046,784, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Alton School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:1310 and 16 to take up the issue of revised operating budget only. This warrant article does not include appropriations in any other warrant articles. The Alton School Board recommends $18,096,405 by a vote of 4-0, and the Alton Budget Committee recommends $18,096,405 by a vote of 6-0. A majority vote is required. Who moves this article?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Christy. And who seconds?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Carol. And is there any discussion on the article? Seeing none, we will vote the article. All those in favor of moving this to the ballot? Any opposed? Article would be moved to the ballot. Do we have a motion to restrict further consideration?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Christy and Carol, thank you. Article 3, to add funds to the Boiler Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $120,000 to be added to the existing water heaters, boilers, ventilation systems, capital reserve fund created 3-9 of 99 under RSA 35:1 for the purpose of repairing or replacing water heaters, boilers, and ventilation systems. The Alton School Board recommends $120,000 by a vote of 4-0, and the Alton Budget Committee recommends $120,000 by a vote of 6-0. A majority vote is required. Who moves this?
So moved.
Thanks, Carol. And second?
Second.
Thank you, Anne. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of moving to the ballot? Anyone opposed? Okay. Article moves forward to the ballot. Do we have a motion to restrict further consideration?
So moved.
Thank you, Carol.
Second.
Seconded by Anne. Article 4, add to Special Education Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the school district shall vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $150,000 to be added to the existing Special Education Capital Reserve Fund created 3/14/87 under RSA 35:1 for the purpose of educating educationally handicapped children. The Alton School Board recommends $150,000 by a vote of 4-0, and the Alton Budget Committee recommends $150,000 by a vote of 6-0. Who moves this article?
So moved.
Thank you, Anne. And who seconds?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christy. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving Article 4 to the ballot? Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a motion to restrict further consideration?
So moved.
Thank you, Anne,
I'll second.
and thank you, Christy. And Article 5, reports and business. To hear reports of any committee, boards, trustees, commissions, officials, agents, or concerned voters, and vote to accept the same. Furthermore, to conduct any other business that may legally come before said meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to speak at this time? Okay. Seeing none, I will officially adjourn the deliberative session at 1:33 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for coming.